The silver knife clattered to the floor, and Elena's hand came away red with blood that wasn't hers. Lord Ashford's blood, seeping from the wound in his chest as he collapsed against the marble floor of the manor's dining hall. Around her, the screams began, aristocratic voices rising in horror and accusation, and all she could think was that she'd only been refilling his wine glass when he'd gasped and fallen forward. Wait, before the next revelation happens, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To make sure you don't miss any unexpected alliances or awakened powers, subscribe and join our circle. The game is about to change. Now, back to the scene. "Murderess!" Lady Ashford shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Elena. "She poisoned him! I saw her add something to his wine!" Elena's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. The wine decanter slipped from her grip, shattering across the floor in a spray of burgundy that looked too much like the blood pooling beneath Lord Ashford's still form. She'd added nothing, only poured from the same bottle that had served the entire table. "Guards!" Lord Pemberton rose from his seat, his face florid with rage. "Seize that girl before she kills us all!" Two uniformed men grabbed Elena's arms, their grips bruising as they wrenched her hands behind her back. She struggled, panic flooding her veins. I swear I didn't do anything. The wine was already poured. I only—" "Lying wretch," Lady Ashford spat. "My husband is dead because of you." But Lord Ashford wasn't dead. Elena could see his chest still rising, shallow and labored. "He's alive," she said desperately. "Please, call a physician. He needs—" "Silence her," Lord Pemberton commanded. One of the guards struck her across the face, and Elena tasted copper. Through the ringing in her ears and the chaos of shouting nobles, she heard a voice cut through the din like a blade through silk. "Enough." The word was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. Every person in the dining hall froze. A man stood in the doorway, tall, dark-haired, dressed entirely in black except for the silver pin at his throat shaped like a crescent moon. Elena had never seen him before, yet something about him made her blood run cold and hot simultaneously. His eyes, pale as winter ice, swept across the room before settling on her with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. Lord Valorian. Lord Pemberton's voice had lost all its bluster. "We didn't expect you until tomorrow evening." Clearly. The man called Valorian moved into the room with a predator's grace. The crowd parted for him as if compelled. I arrive early and find a gathering of nobles poised to condemn a servant girl without trial or evidence. How very civilized of you all. "The evidence is clear," Lady Ashford protested, though her voice wavered. "She was the only one near him when he collapsed. She must have—" "Must have?" Valorian's eyebrow arched. "You base murder charges on must have?" He crouched beside Lord Ashford's body, his movements fluid. When he touched two fingers to the fallen man's neck, Elena saw something flicker across his face, something ancient and knowing. He lives. Barely. The poison is nightshade mixed with foxglove. A classic combination, but crude. It takes at least 20 minutes to take effect. "You see," Lady Ashford's voice grew shrill, "she had opportunity." "She had opportunity only if she poisoned the wine before it was poured," Valorian interrupted, rising to his full height. His eyes found Elena's again, and she felt pinned by that gaze, as if he could see through flesh and bone to the truth beneath. "Tell me, girl, when did you last handle this bottle?" Elena's voice shook. I brought it from the cellar 10 minutes ago. It was sealed. I opened it at the sideboard and poured immediately. And before you brought it? It was in the locked wine cellar. Only the head butler has the key. Valorian's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. How fascinating! 20 minutes for the poison to take effect, yet the bottle was sealed and only 10 minutes ago. He turned to face the assembled nobles, and Elena saw several of them step back. Either this girl has access to poison that works faster than any known to science, or someone is lying. "This is preposterous," Lord Pemberton blustered. "You would take the word of a servant over—" "I take the word of evidence," Valorian said softly, dangerously, "and chemistry, and the fact that our dear Lady Ashford has been Lord Ashford's wife for only 6 months, having married him quite suddenly after his first wife's tragic death from a mysterious illness." His gaze settled on Lady Ashford like a hawk spotting prey. An illness that bore remarkable similarities to nightshade poisoning, if I recall the physician's report correctly. Lady Ashford's face drained of color. "How dare you imply?" "I imply nothing. I simply find it curious that Lord Ashford chose tonight to finally change his will, cutting your allowance to a mere pittance should he die." Valorian pulled a folded document from inside his coat. "He consulted with me just this afternoon about the legal protections. He seemed quite concerned about his safety, actually, almost as if he suspected someone close to him might wish him harm." The room had gone deathly silent. "You're lying," Lady Ashford whispered. "I am many things, madam, but a liar is not among them." Valorian handed the document to Lord Pemberton, who scanned it with widening eyes. "As you can see, Lord Ashford was quite explicit. In the event of his death by any means other than natural causes, his entire estate was to be held in trust, and his wife would receive only a modest stipend. He even specified that a full investigation be conducted should he die suddenly." Lady Ashford's composure cracked. "He promised me. He said—" She caught herself, but too late. "Promised you what?" Valorian's voice was silk over steel. "His fortune? His estates? What exactly did your lover promise you, Lady Ashford?" "I have no lover." "Then explain the letters I found in your chambers this afternoon, the ones from a certain Captain Rothmore, detailing your plans to be together once the old fool is gone." Valorian produced another sheaf of papers. "I must say his poetry is atrocious, but his descriptions of your scheme are remarkably detailed." Lady Ashford lunged forward, but the guards who'd been holding Elena moved to restrain her instead. She fought against them, her face twisted with rage and fear. "You had no right to search my rooms." "I had every right. Lord Ashford hired me to investigate his suspicions." Valorian's expression was cold now, all pretense of civility gone. "You've been poisoning him, slowly, for weeks, haven't you? Small doses, building up in his system. Tonight was meant to be the final act. But you needed a scapegoat, so you paid one of the kitchen staff to ensure this particular bottle made it to the table. And you made certain this girl," he gestured to Elena, "was the one to pour it." "That's not— I never—" Lady Ashford's protests dissolved into sobs. "The kitchen boy confessed this afternoon," Valorian continued mercilessly. "He accepted your gold to plant the bottle. He didn't know what it contained, of course. You're clever enough for that, but not clever enough to realize that I've been investigating you since Lord Ashford first came to me 3 days ago." Lord Pemberton cleared his throat. "Then this girl is innocent?" "Entirely." Valorian turned to Elena and his expression softened fractionally. "Release her." The guards let go of Elena's arms, and she nearly collapsed. Her legs felt like water, her mind reeling. She'd been seconds away from prison, or worse, hanging, for a crime she hadn't committed. Take Lady Ashford to the magistrate, and someone summon a real physician for Lord Ashford. With proper treatment, he should survive. The poison hasn't been in his system long enough for permanent damage. As the guards dragged a screaming Lady Ashford away and the other nobles rushed to Lord Ashford's aid, Valorian approached Elena. Up close, she could see that his skin was too pale, too perfect. His eyes were too old for his face. And when he spoke, she caught a glimpse of teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "You're remarkably composed for someone who nearly died tonight," he observed. Elena's laugh was shaky and bitter. "Am I? I don't feel composed. I feel like I'm going to be sick." "That's the terror leaving your system. It will pass." He studied her with that unsettling intensity. "What's your name?" "Elena. Elena Hartley." "Well, Elena Hartley, you have a choice to make." Valorian's voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears. "You can return to your life as a servant in this house, knowing that these nobles will always look at you with suspicion despite your innocence. Or you can come work for me." Elena blinked. "Work for you? But I'm just a waitress. I don't have any special skills." "You have something more valuable than skills. You have keen observation and an honest face." His smile was sharp as glass. "I'm a private investigator of sorts. I solve problems for the nobility, problems they'd rather keep quiet. I need someone who can move through their world without drawing attention, someone who can listen and watch and report what they see." "You mean you want me to spy?" "I prefer the term gather information, but yes, essentially." Valorian pulled out a card embossed with silver lettering. "Think about it. If you're interested, come to this address tomorrow evening, after sunset." Elena took the card with trembling fingers. The address was in the Old Quarter, the part of the city where ancient buildings leaned against each other like weary soldiers, and people whispered about things that went bump in the night. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Valorian's expression became unreadable. "Because I know what it's like to be condemned for something you didn't do. Because I saw the truth in your tears when no one else bothered to look." He turned to leave, his coat swirling around him. "And because, Elena Hartley, you're going to need a protector now. You've made enemies tonight simply by being innocent. The friends of Lady Ashford will not forget that you were the catalyst for her downfall, however unintentional." He was gone before Elena could respond, vanishing into the shadows of the corridor as if he'd never been there at all. Elena stood in the chaos of the dining hall, holding the card, and wondered what kind of man could walk into a room full of hostile nobles and command absolute obedience with a single word. What kind of man could produce evidence and confessions as if he'd orchestrated everything? And what kind of man had eyes that ancient and teeth that sharp? She looked down at the card again. The address seemed to pulse in her vision. She had until tomorrow evening to decide if she was brave enough or desperate enough to find out. As sunset approached, Elena changed out of her work uniform and into her only decent dress, a simple gray wool that had seen better days, but was at least clean. She tied her dark hair back and studied her reflection in the cracked mirror. The bruise on her cheek from the guard's strike was already fading to yellow-green. Her dark eyes looked too large in her thin face, haunted by the near miss with death. The Old Quarter was a 30-minute walk from the manor. Elena had rarely ventured there. Servants had little reason to visit the crumbling district where ancient families clung to faded glory, and newcomers sought cheap rent among the shadows. But as she walked through streets that grew progressively narrower and darker, she felt a strange pull, as if something was guiding her steps. The address on Valorian's card led to a townhouse wedged between two larger buildings. Unlike its neighbors, this one was immaculately maintained. The windows glowed with warm light, and the door was painted a deep, glossy black. Elena raised her hand to knock, but the door swung open before her knuckles could connect with wood. Valorian stood in the doorway, dressed more casually than the night before in a white shirt and black vest. Without his coat and formal attire, he looked younger, though his eyes remained impossibly old. "You came," he said, and Elena couldn't tell if he was surprised or pleased. "I didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice." He stepped back to let her enter. "But I'm glad you made this one." The interior of the townhouse was nothing like Elena expected. She'd imagined something dark and gothic, filled with dusty tomes and moth-eaten curtains. Instead, the space was surprisingly modern and bright. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked both ancient and well cared for. Gas lamps cast a warm glow over comfortable furniture and thick carpets. A fire crackled in the hearth. "You look surprised," Valorian observed, closing the door behind her. I'm not sure what I thought. Most people expect cobwebs and coffins." His smile was wry. "Disappointing, I know. Would you like tea, or something stronger? You look like you could use it." "Tea would be nice." Valorian led her to a study where a tea service was already laid out, steam rising from the pot as if he'd known exactly when she'd arrive. He poured with the same fluid grace had displayed the night before, and Elena found herself staring at his hands. They were elegant, long-fingered, and impossibly steady. "You have questions," he said, handing her a cup. "Ask them." Elena wrapped her hands around the warm porcelain, gathering her courage. "What are you?" "Direct. I like that." Valorian settled into the chair across from her, his own cup balanced on the armrest. "What do you think I am?" "The servants say you have connections in high and low places. The butler went pale when I asked about you. Your eyes are too old for your face, and your teeth—" She stopped, feeling foolish. "My teeth are too sharp," Valorian finished. "You're observant. That's good. You'll need to be in this line of work." He set down his cup and leaned forward. "I'm going to tell you something that most humans spend their entire lives trying not to believe. Vampires are real. We've always been real. We walk among you, hidden in plain sight. Some of us prey on humanity. Others of us have learned to coexist." Elena's first instinct was to laugh, but the sound died in her throat. Because looking at Valorian, really looking at him, she knew he was telling the truth. The too pale skin, the uncanny stillness when he wasn't moving, the way had known exactly how long Nightshade took to work, as if he'd seen it before, many times before. "You're a vampire," she said flatly. "I am. And you want me to work for you." "I do." "Why would a vampire need a human investigator?" Valorian's expression grew serious. "Because there are places I cannot go. Times I cannot operate. People who will not speak freely if they know what I am." He paused. "And because the world of vampire politics is becoming increasingly intertwined with human affairs. I need someone who can navigate both worlds, someone observant and brave and clever enough to survive." "I'm not brave," Elena said quietly. "I was terrified last night. I'm terrified now." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. You came here tonight knowing what I might be. That's brave." Valorian stood and walked to a cabinet, withdrawing a leather folder. "This is your first case, if you choose to accept it." Elena took the folder with shaking hands. Inside were newspaper clippings and handwritten notes. All of them concerned a series of disappearances in the theater district. Young women, all performers, all vanishing without a trace over the past 3 months.
The police have called it mass hysteria, Valorian explained. They believe the women simply ran away, but I know better. Something is hunting them, something that understands the patterns of human behavior well enough to avoid detection. You think it's a vampire? I think it's a vampire who's forgotten the most important rule of our kind: never draw attention. Whoever is doing this is reckless, and recklessness endangers us all. His voice hardened. There are laws in our world, Elena, strict laws about killing. This vampire is breaking them. And when vampires break laws, it's usually humans who suffer the consequences. Elena studied the clippings. The women's faces stared back at her from grainy photographs. All beautiful, all young, all full of life before they vanished. What do you want me to do? I want you to go into the theaters, audition as a performer, get close to the other women, learn who they trust, what they know. Someone has seen something, but they won't talk to the police, and they certainly won't talk to me. Valorian returned to his chair. You'll be compensated well.
Triple what you made at the manor, and I'll provide protection. You'll carry a token that marks you as under my territory. Any vampire who encounters you will know to keep their distance. And if the one killing these women doesn't care about your territory, then I'll deal with them personally. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I don't take kindly to those who threaten what's mine. The possessiveness in his tone made Elena shiver, though not entirely with fear. Why do you care so much? About the women, I mean, or about me? Valorian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. I was human once, a very long time ago. I remember what it felt like to be powerless, to be at the mercy of those stronger and crueler than myself. I remember what it felt like to be falsely accused, to see truth twisted into lies. His eyes met hers. I became what I am because I was given a choice. Die in a prison cell for crimes I didn't commit, or accept eternal life and the power to ensure others didn't suffer as I had. I chose power, and I've spent the last 300 years trying to use it justly. 300 years? The number was incomprehensible. Elena looked at the man, the creature before her, and tried to imagine centuries of life, centuries of accumulated knowledge and pain and experience. I'll do it, she heard herself say. I'll take the case. Valorian's smile was genuine this time, warming his cold features. Excellent. We'll begin tomorrow. For tonight, I want you to read through all the materials. Memorize the women's faces, their backgrounds, their last known locations. And Elena? He stood and offered his hand. Welcome to a world you never knew existed. Elena shook his hand, and his skin was cool against her palm, but his grip was gentle. In that moment, standing in a vampire's study and agreeing to hunt a killer of her own kind, Elena felt the first stirring of something she hadn't experienced in years: purpose. She'd spent her entire life serving others, invisible and voiceless. Maybe now, finally, she could be something more. The Crimson Stage Theater was smaller than Elena expected, tucked into a narrow street in the entertainment district. Its facade was painted red, with gilt lettering that had begun to flake, and a marquee advertising that evening's performance of The Phantom's Bride. Elena clutched her audition materials, a monologue Valerian had helped her prepare, and tried to calm her racing heart. She'd spent the previous night memorizing every detail of the missing women. Caroline Winters, 23, vanished after a Thursday evening performance. Isabel Hart, 21, disappeared on her way home from rehearsal. Marie Deschamps, 19, last seen leaving the theater's stage door. 4 others followed similar patterns. All were beautiful, all were talented, all simply ceased to exist. Inside, the theater was a maze of velvet seats and shadowed alcoves. The stage was bathed in gaslight, where a woman in her 40s was directing a group of dancers through their paces. She turned when Elena entered, her sharp eyes assessing. "Yes, we're in rehearsal. I'm here for the auditions. For the chorus position?" Elena's voice didn't shake, which she counted as a victory. The woman's expression softened slightly. "Ah, yes, we're desperate for new girls after—" She caught herself. "After several members of our company left rather suddenly. I'm Madame Rousseau, the director. You have material prepared?" Elena performed her monologue on that stage, under those burning lights, with Madame Rousseau and two men she didn't recognize watching from the darkness of the house. She channeled every ounce of fear and determination from the past 2 days, letting it pour out in the words of a woman facing impossible odds. When she finished, the theater was silent. Then Madame Rousseau began to clap. "Brava, my dear, brava! You're untrained, but you have something raw and real." "We can work with that." She came down the aisle, her skirts rustling. "What's your name?" "Elena Hartley." "Well, Miss Hartley, welcome to the Crimson Stage. Rehearsals are Monday through Friday, performances Thursday through Saturday. We pay weekly, though I must warn you, it's not much. And," she hesitated, "I feel obligated to mention that several of our performers have recently left. The circumstances were unusual. Some of the other girls are nervous. If you're easily frightened, this might not be the place for you." "I'm not easily frightened," Elena lied. "Good, because I've worked too hard to build this company to let superstitious nonsense destroy it." Madame Rousseau's jaw set. "The police say the girls simply ran off with lovers or went home to their families. I choose to believe them. Now, let me introduce you to the others." The other performers were in the dressing rooms, a cramped space behind the stage that smelled of powder and sweat and perfume. There were 8 women in various states of dress and preparation, and they all stopped talking when Elena entered with Madame Rousseau. "Ladies, this is Elena Hartley. She'll be joining the company." Madame Rousseau gestured around the room. "Elena, these are the lionesses of the Crimson Stage. Treat them well, and they'll do the same for you." After Madame Rousseau left, the women resumed their preparations, but Elena felt their eyes on her, assessing, measuring, wondering. Finally, a petite blonde in a brilliant blue dressing gown approached. "I'm Lily," she said, offering a hand. "Don't mind the cold reception. We're all a bit on edge since the disappearances." Madame Rousseau mentioned that. "What do you think happened to them?" Lily's expression darkened. "The police say they ran away, but that's rubbish. Caroline would never have left without telling me. We were like sisters, and her things are still in her boarding house, even her money." What girl runs away and leaves her savings behind? "Maybe she was running from something," suggested a tall redhead from across the room. "Maybe they all were." "From what, Sophia?" Lily challenged. "We're performers, not criminals." "I'm just saying, we don't really know what any of them were involved in." Sophia returned to painting her lips. "People keep secrets." Elena spent the rest of that first rehearsal watching and listening. The women were talented, certainly, but they were also frightened. She caught whispered conversations that stopped when she drew near, saw glances exchanged that spoke of shared knowledge and suspicion. Something had happened here, something that went beyond simple disappearances. It was during a break, when Elena was standing in the alley behind the theater getting some air, that she noticed him. A man stood at the far end of the alley, half hidden in shadows. He was watching the stage door with an intensity that made Elena's instincts scream. He was handsome in a conventional way, blonde hair, strong jaw, well-dressed, but there was something off about him, something predatory. Elena pretended not to notice him, chatting with Lily, who'd followed her outside. But she memorized every detail: the cut of his coat, the silver watch chain, the way he held himself with utter stillness. When they went back inside, the man was gone. That night, Elena reported everything to Valorian in his study. He listened intently, his fingers steepled beneath his chin.
"Describe him again," he commanded, "every detail." Elena did, and watched Valorian's expression grow darker. "I know him," Valorian said quietly. "His name is Marcus Thorne. He's a vampire, and he's trouble. Older than me by a century, which makes him approximately 400 years old. He has a taste for performers, finds their passion intoxicating, or so he's claimed." Valorian stood and began to pace. "But Marcus knows the laws. He knows that killing draws attention."
If he's behind the disappearances, he's either grown incredibly reckless or he has a reason to break centuries of careful behavior. What kind of reason? That's what we need to find out. Valorian turned to face her. "Elena, I need you to continue at the theater. Get close to the other women. Find out if any of them have encountered Marcus before, if he's approached them, made promises. Vampires often seduce their victims first, make them willing participants in their own destruction." Elena shuddered. "How do I protect myself if he comes after me?" Valorian reached into his vest and withdrew a pendant on a silver chain. It was small, discreet, a crescent moon that matched the pin he wore. "This marks you as under my protection. Any vampire will recognize it. But more than that?" He stepped closer, and Elena found herself unable to move as he fastened the chain around her neck. His fingers were cool against her skin, his breath cold against her ear. "I want you to carry this." He pressed a small silver knife into her palm. It was beautiful and deadly, the blade etched with symbols Elena didn't recognize. Silver doesn't kill vampires, that's a myth. But it burns us, slows us down. If Marcus or any other vampire tries to harm you, aim for the throat or chest. It will buy you time to run. His hand covered hers, folding her fingers around the knife's handle. "And if you're ever in true danger, call my name. I'll hear you." "How?" "Because as of this moment, you're bound to me. The pendant isn't just a symbol, it's a connection. I'll always know where you are, and I'll always know if you're in distress." Valorian's eyes met hers, and Elena saw something there she couldn't name. "You're under my protection now, Elena. Truly. Nothing will harm you without going through me first." The weight of that promise settled over Elena like a cloak. She should have been frightened. She was bound to a vampire, marked as his property in a world she'd only just learned existed. But instead, she felt safe. Safer than Shed felt in years. "I won't let you down," she whispered. "I know you won't." Valorian stepped back, breaking the spell. "Now, go home and rest. Tomorrow, you hunt a killer. And Elena, be careful. Marcus is charming and clever and utterly without conscience. Don't trust anything he says." Elena left the townhouse with the knife hidden in her pocket and the pendant warm against her skin. As she walked through the dark streets, she could have sworn she felt Valorian's presence in the back of her mind, a faint awareness that she was not alone. She wondered if she'd ever be truly alone again. The breakthrough came 3 days later in the form of a terrified girl named Amelia. Elena had been working hard to earn the trust of the other performers, sharing her own story of being falsely accused and nearly executed for a crime she didn't commit. The tale created an instant bond. These women understood what it meant to be vulnerable, to be blamed for things beyond their control. Gradually, they opened up to her. It was after Thursday's performance, while the women were removing their makeup and costumes, that Amelia finally spoke. "He came to me last night," she said quietly, her hands shaking as she tried to unpin her hair. "The man you asked about, the blonde one." Every woman in the dressing room went still. "Where?" Elena kept her voice gentle, non-threatening. "Outside my boarding house. He knew my name, knew I performed here. He said he was a patron of the arts, that he wanted to sponsor my career." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "He was so charming, so convincing. He invited me to dinner at his estate,
Said he wanted to introduce me to influential people who could help me become a star. Did you go? Lily asked. No, because Caroline accepted a similar invitation, the night before she disappeared. Amelia looked around at the other women. I never told anyone because I was scared.
What if he came back for me? What if telling the police made him angry? Sophia leaned forward. Isabel mentioned a blonde gentleman too. She showed me an invitation to a private party at some manor house. She was so excited about it. One by one, the women shared their stories. Marcus Thorne had approached 5 of the missing performers in the weeks before they vanished, always with the same promise. He could make them stars, introduce them to the right people, change their lives. And the women, desperate for success in a world that gave them few opportunities, had accepted his invitations. "Why didn't you tell the police?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because we're theater girls," Lily said bitterly. "Performers. The police think we're all whores and liars. They wouldn't have believed us. They would have said we made it up for attention." Elena felt rage burn in her chest. These women had seen the pattern, had known something was wrong, but they'd been voiceless, just like she'd been when faced with Lady Ashford's false accusations. The system didn't protect people like them. It didn't even see them. "I believe you," Elena said firmly. "All of you, and I'm going to make sure he's stopped." "How?" Amelia whispered. "He's rich and powerful. We're nobody." "You're not nobody, and he's not untouchable," Elena stood. "But I need your help. If he approaches any of you again, I need to know immediately. Don't accept his invitations, but don't refuse outright either. Make excuses. Say you need to think about it. Buy time." "What are you going to do?" Sophia asked. "I'm going to find someone who can stop him. Someone he can't charm or threaten." Elena touched the pendant at her throat. "Trust me." She left the theater and ran through the dark streets to Valorian's townhouse, her heart pounding. She didn't knock this time. The door swung open as if Valorian had sensed her coming. He was waiting in the foyer, his expression already grave. "I felt your distress." What happened? Elena told him everything, the words tumbling out. Valorian listened in absolute silence, but his eyes grew colder with each revelation. 5 women lured to his estate with promises of advancement, he said when she finished. The oldest vampire con in existence. Offer them something they desperately want, make them come willingly, and by the time they realize the truth, it's too late. Valorian's hands clenched into fists. He's not just breaking the law against humans, he's making a mockery of everything we've built. 300 years of careful coexistence destroyed by one arrogant fool who thinks he's above consequences. What do? We end him. Valorian's voice was flat, final. But we need evidence. We need to catch him in the act with witnesses. Otherwise, the Vampire Council will claim I'm simply eliminating a rival. He looked at Elena, and she saw reluctance in his eyes. "I need you to be bait." Elena had known it would come to this. "Tell me what to do." "Marcus will approach you soon. You're new, untainted by suspicion. When he does, accept his invitation. But carry this." Valorian pressed something into her hand. It was a small glass vial filled with dark liquid. "It's my blood. If you're in danger, break it. I'll be there in seconds." Elena stared at the vial. "This feels like a terrible plan." "It is a terrible plan, but it's the only one we have." Valorian cupped her face in his cool hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I won't let him hurt you, Elena, I swear it. But I need you to be brave one more time. Can you do that?" Elena thought of Caroline, Isabel, Marie, and all the others. She thought of their families who would never know what happened to them. She thought of the women still at the theater, terrified and voiceless. "Yes," she said, "I can do that." Marcus Thorne approached Elena 2 nights later, after Saturday's final performance. She was leaving through the stage door when she saw him leaning against the wall of the alley, that same predatory stillness about him. When he saw her, his smile was dazzling. "Miss Hartley, isn't it? I've been watching your performances. Quite captivating." Elena clutched her shawl tighter, the vial of Valorian's blood hidden in her pocket along with the silver knife. "Thank you, sir." "Please, call me Marcus." He pushed away from the wall, moving closer with fluid grace. "I'm a great patron of the arts, you see. I enjoy supporting talented young performers who have the potential for greatness." "That's very kind of you, Mr. Thorne." "Marcus, please." His smile widened. "I'm hosting a small gathering next Friday evening at my estate. Just a few influential people who appreciate beauty and talent. I'd love for you to attend. There will be producers, directors, people who could change your life with a single introduction." Elena let herself look tempted, even as fear coiled in her stomach. "That sounds wonderful, but I don't know if—" "I insist. Consider it an investment in your future." Marcus produced a cream-colored invitation from his coat. 8 o'clock. The address is on the card. Dress beautifully. First impressions matter in this business. Elena took the invitation with trembling fingers. The paper was expensive, the lettering elegant. The address was in the wealthy district, where ancient families lived in crumbling mansions behind high walls. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne. I'll do my best to attend." "Excellent." Marcus tipped his hat. "Until Friday, then. I have a feeling you're going to become a star, Miss Hartley. A bright, shining star." He walked away, and Elena watched him disappear into the darkness. Only when he was gone did she allow herself to breathe. She went directly to Valorian's townhouse and found him in his study, reading by lamplight. He looked up when she entered, and his nostrils flared. "He touched you." It wasn't a question. "Just my hand when he gave me the invitation." Elena handed him the card. "Friday at 8. Valorian studied the invitation, and his expression grew dark. "This is his ancestral estate. It's been in his family for centuries. Ancient ground, which means ancient protections. I can't simply walk in uninvited. What does that mean? It means I'll need to be invited inside by someone with authority. Normally, that would be Marcus himself, which obviously won't happen." Valorian set down the invitation. "But if you're inside and you're bound to me, I can use that connection. You'll need to explicitly invite me in once you're past the threshold." Elena nodded slowly. "So I go to the party, get inside, and then call for you? And I'll come. But Elena, you need to understand, if Marcus realizes what you're doing before I arrive, there's a limit to how much the blood vial can help you. It will summon me, yes, but even I can't cross distance instantaneously. You'll need to survive long enough for me to reach you." "How long?" 5 minutes, maybe less if I'm nearby." Valorian stood and pulled her into his arms, the embrace sudden and fierce. 5 minutes is an eternity when you're fighting a 400-year-old vampire. "Promise me you'll run if you get the chance. Promise me you'll survive." Elena breathed in his scent, old books and winter air, and something indefinably ancient. "I promise." But they both knew she was lying. Friday arrived with agonizing slowness. Elena spent the week rehearsing, performing, and trying to act normal while terror gnawed at her insides. Valorian had given her a dress for the occasion, deep crimson silk that fit perfectly, with a modest neckline and long sleeves. She wore the pendant, the knife, and carried the vial in a small clutch purse. The other women at the theater knew something was happening. Lily had pulled Elena aside that morning, gripping her hands tightly. "Don't go," she pleaded. "Whatever you're planning, it's not worth your life." "It's worth 5 lives that have already been taken," Elena had replied, "and all the lives he'll take in the future if someone doesn't stop him." At 7:30, a carriage arrived at Elena's boarding house, sent by Marcus, though the driver claimed to know nothing. Elena climbed inside, and the vehicle carried her through darkening streets toward the wealthy district. Marcus Thorne's estate was everything Elena had feared. High stone walls surrounded a Gothic mansion that looked like something from a nightmare, all towers and turrets and narrow windows that glowed with cold light. The carriage passed through iron gates that clanged shut behind them, and Elena felt the trap closing. A butler met her at the door, an old man with vacant eyes who moved like a puppet on strings. He took her shawl and led her through marble corridors hung with portraits of pale, beautiful people with two knowing eyes. Every painting watched her pass. The gathering was in the ballroom, and Elena's blood ran cold when she saw it. There were no influential producers or directors. There were only 4 other guests, all young women, all performers she recognized from other theaters around the city. They wore beautiful dresses and frightened smiles, and they clutched champagne glasses like lifelines. And Marcus stood at the center of it all, resplendent in black evening wear, smiling his dazzling smile. "Miss Hartley," he approached with arms spread wide, "welcome, welcome! You look absolutely radiant. Come, let me introduce you to your fellow guests." The other women had similar stories. Marcus had approached them, promised them success, invited them to this exclusive gathering. None of them had realized until they arrived that there were no industry professionals here, just Marcus, and the vacant-eyed servants who stood like statues around the room's perimeter. "I believe we're all present now," Marcus announced, clapping his hands together. "How wonderful! I do so enjoy an intimate gathering." His smile widened, and Elena saw his teeth lengthen. "Shall we begin?" One of the women screamed. Elena reached for the vial in her purse. But Marcus moved faster than thought, crossing the room in a blur. He grabbed Elena's wrist, squeezing until she gasped and dropped the purse. The vial shattered on the marble floor, Valorian's blood spreading in a dark pool. "Did you think I didn't know?" Marcus's voice was silk and poison. "Did you think I couldn't smell Valorian's claim on you? I've been watching you, little mouse, watching you scurry to him every night, watching you plot and plan. You're not here to be recruited. You're here to send a message." He dragged Elena toward him, his other hand tangling in her hair. The other women were screaming now, trying to run, but the servants blocked the doors. The trap had been for all of them, but Elena had sprung it too soon. "Valorian thinks he's so noble," Marcus hissed against her ear. "Thinks he's better than the rest of us because he's chosen to play human. But he's just as much a monster as I am. And when I drain you dry and leave your body on his doorstep, he'll finally understand that." Elena fumbled for the silver knife with her free hand. Her fingers closed around the handle. "I invite you in," she gasped. Marcus paused. "What?" "Lord Valorian, I invite you into this house. I invite you to enter freely and of your own will." The room's temperature dropped to freezing. The candles flickered and died. And then the ballroom doors exploded inward in a shower of splintered wood. Valorian stood in the doorway, and he was terrifying. His eyes blazed with an unholy light. His lips pulled back from fangs that were nothing like Marcus's civilized smile. He looked ancient and powerful and utterly without mercy. "Release her," Valorian commanded, his voice resonating with centuries of absolute authority. "Now." Marcus threw Elena aside. She hit the floor hard, her head cracking against marble. Through blurred vision, she saw the two vampires face each other, Marcus with his confident sneer, Valorian with his cold fury. "She came here of her own free will," Marcus said. "They all did. I broke no laws." "You broke the most fundamental law of our kind. You killed without permission, without cause, drawing attention to our existence. You risked everything we've built." Valorian moved into the room, and the other women fled past him, their screams echoing through the mansion. "And you dared to touch what's mine." "Yours?" Marcus laughed. "You don't own her. You don't own anything except that pathetic human morality you wear like a costume. We're predators, Valorian. It's time you remembered that." What happened next was too fast for Elena to fully comprehend. Marcus lunged, but Valorian was faster. They collided with a sound like thunder, fangs and claws flashing. They moved too quickly to track, smashing through furniture and into walls. Blood, dark and strange, spattered across the marble floor. Elena struggled to her feet, still clutching the silver knife. She had to do something, had to help somehow. But how did a human help in a battle between monsters? The answer came when she saw Marcus gain the upper hand, pinning Valorian against a column. Marcus's fangs descended toward Valorian's throat, and Elena knew that even vampires could be killed by their own kind. She ran forward and plunged the silver knife into Marcus's back. The vampire shrieked, a sound that shattered the remaining windows. He spun, backhanding Elena across the room. She hit the wall and slid down, tasting blood. But the distraction was enough. Valorian surged upward, his hand closing around Marcus's throat. "You lose," he said simply. And then he tore Marcus's head from his shoulders. The body crumbled to dust instantly, the ancient vampire reduced to nothing in seconds. The mansion groaned around them, and Elena realized the structure was beginning to collapse. Marcus had been its heart, and with his death, centuries of magic were unraveling. Valorian was at her side instantly, lifting her into his arms. "Hold on to me." He ran, moving with that impossible speed, carrying Elena through collapsing corridors and falling ceiling beams. They burst through the front doors just as the mansion imploded behind them, centuries of stone and dark magic folding in on itself until nothing remained but rubble and dust. The other women were huddled by the gates, crying and holding each other. Valorian set Elena down gently, checking her for injuries with careful hands. "I'm okay," she managed. "Bruised, but okay." "You stabbed him," Valorian said, and there was something like wonder in his voice. "A human stabbed a 400-year-old vampire to save me?" "You said the silver would slow him down. I just acted." Elena looked at the ruins of the mansion. Is he really dead? Decapitation is one of the few things that will kill us permanently. Yes, he's dead. Valorian pulled her close. It's over. But Elena shook her head. What about the women he already killed? Their families deserve to know what happened to them. Their bodies were in the mansion. The collapse will have destroyed any evidence. Valorian's expression was regretful. I'm sorry. Sometimes that's the cost of dealing with our kind. Closure becomes impossible. Elena thought of Caroline, Isabel, Marie, and all the others. They would remain missing persons forever, their fates unknown to their loved ones. It wasn't justice, but it was the best they could hope for. Can we at least get these women home safely? She asked. Of course. Valorian arranged for carriages and saw each woman safely return to their lodgings. He compelled them gently. Elena watched his eyes glow as he spoke to them, to forget the worst of what they'd seen, to remember only that Marcus had been caught attempting assault and had fled when Valorian arrived.
The trauma would remain, but the supernatural horror would fade to nightmare. It was nearly dawn when Valorian and Elena finally returned to his townhouse. Elena was exhausted, every muscle aching, but her mind was too active for sleep. "You saved my life," she said, standing in his study. "Again." "You saved mine first. That makes us even." Valorian poured 2 glasses of brandy and handed her one. "You were magnificent tonight, Elena. Terrified but brave, smart, quick thinking. You're everything I hoped you'd be and more. I never want to do anything like that again. I wouldn't blame you if you walked away, went back to a normal life." Valorian sipped his brandy, studying her over the rim of his glass. "But I hope you won't, because you're good at this, and, more importantly, you care about the people we're trying to protect. That's rare, even among humans." Elena considered. She could return to serving tables, invisible and voiceless. Or she could continue this strange new life, working alongside a vampire to protect humans and vampires alike from those who would prey on the vulnerable. "Elena, stay," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "I want to learn everything. How your world works, your laws, your politics, your history. If I'm going to keep doing this, I need to understand what I'm really dealing with." Valorian's smile was slow and genuine. "Deal. I'll teach you everything I know. And Elena, thank you. For trusting me. For trusting yourself." They stood there as dawn broke over the city, a vampire and a human, partners in the strangest alliance either of them had ever imagined. Elena touched the pendant at her throat. Valorian's mark, Valorian's protection, Valorian's bond. She wasn't sure when she'd stopped being afraid of him. Wasn't sure when his presence had begun to feel like safety rather than danger. But somewhere between false accusations and vampire battles, between terror and triumph, she'd found something unexpected. She'd found purpose. She'd found power. And maybe, just maybe, she'd found where she belonged. 6 months later, Elena stood in Valorian's study reviewing case files for their latest investigation. She'd learned so much since that night at Marcus' estate. Learned about vampire politics and ancient bloodlines, about the delicate balance between the supernatural and mundane worlds, about the constant struggle to maintain peace between species that viewed each other with fear and suspicion. She'd also learned that Valorian's protection extended far beyond a simple pendant. He'd introduced her to the Vampire Council as his official human liaison, giving her authority to speak on his behalf and investigate crimes that affected both communities. The other vampires didn't like it. Humans weren't supposed to have power in their world, but Valorian's reputation and ancient lineage made him untouchable, and by extension, so was she. "You're miles away, Valorian," observed from his desk. "What are you thinking about?" Elena set down the file she'd been reading. "About how different my life is now. 6 months ago, I was terrified of being hanged for a crime I didn't commit. Now, I'm hunting rogue vampires and negotiating peace treaties between supernatural factions. Regrets? None, and she meant it. Though I do miss performing sometimes. There was something magical about being on stage." "Then perform." Valorian stood and crossed to her. "I've purchased the Crimson Stage. Madame Rousseau will remain as director, but the theater is now under my protection. No vampire will hunt there again, and you're welcome to take the stage whenever you wish." Elena stared at him. "You bought an entire theater?" "I'm 300 years old. I have significant resources." His smile was wry. "Besides, those women deserve a safe place to practice their art. Consider it my contribution to human culture." "You're a terrible liar. You did it for me." "Perhaps." Valorian's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost centuries ago, Elena. Hope, purpose, beyond mere survival. A reason to believe that humans and vampires can coexist as partners rather than predator and prey. Elena's breath caught. Over the months, their relationship had slowly shifted from professional to something deeper, more complex. She'd found herself looking forward to their evenings together, studying by lamplight and sharing stories of their vastly different lives. She'd found herself noticing the way he smiled at her wit, the way his eyes softened when she spoke about her hopes and dreams. She'd found herself falling for a vampire. "Valerian," she whispered. A knock at the door interrupted her. They stepped apart as a messenger entered, bearing a sealed letter marked with the Vampire Council's insignia. Valerian opened it, his expression growing grave as he read. "What is it?" Elena asked. "Another case. But this one is different." Valerian handed her the letter. "They're asking for us specifically, both of us. There's been a murder in the noble quarter, a human killed in a vampire's home, and a vampire found dead in a human's residence. The council fears it's the start of a war between our species." Elena scanned the letter, her investigator's mind already working through possibilities. This could tear apart everything we've worked to build. Yes, which is why they need someone who understands both worlds, someone who can see the truth that others might miss. Valerian's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. "Are you ready for this?" Elena looked at their joined hands, pale and dark, cool and warm, immortal and mortal. She thought of all the lives they'd saved in the past 6 months, all the conflicts they'd resolved, all the bridges they'd built between worlds that had been separate for centuries. She thought of that terrified waitress who'd been seconds from death for a crime she didn't commit, and she marveled at how far she'd come. "Yes," she said, squeezing Valerian's hand, "let's go solve a murder." They left the townhouse together, walking into the dawn, partners in the truest sense, a vampire who'd chosen justice over predation, a human who'd chosen courage over fear. And between them, the hope that two worlds might finally learn to trust each other.